So, how many of you have watched The Office? Okay, so very common TV show, and if you have seen it, you've realized that Jim and Dwight have a very complex relationship. And in one of these episodes, Jim decided to mess with Dwight, and he used a theory he learned back in college where he would give Dwight an Altoid every time he heard the computer start. So eventually, he got to the point where he would do the sound, and Dwight would go like this and expect an Altoid. And he'd be like, "What are you doing?" And Dwight would be like, "I honestly don't know." So that whole theory is classical conditioning, which was invented or discovered by Ivan Pavlov. And I personally took psychology last semester, and we explored it like very thoroughly. And I actually applied the theory to my dog. So when he hears, he knows not to to stop what he's doing because a shock will be coming if he doesn't behave. So then another thing that we learned would be that, have you ever noticed when you hear your favorite restaurant's name that you unconsciously salivate? I don't know, I do that with Wings and More, just my opinion. So what he did was basically Ivan Pavlov discovered this theory, and then I'm basically going to talk how he discovered it, the difference from operant conditioning, and its effect on the study of psychology as a whole. So let's learn about the guy who is credited with classical conditioning. As you know, discoveries in science actually occur more on accident than they do planned, which is exactly what happened with Ivan Pavlov's discovery. He originally is a physiologist, and he decided to study the digestion-like process in dogs. So what he would do is he put a tube in their mouths to test how much they actually salivated when they were going to be fed. And what he discovered was that every time they associated something or a sound or a person with being fed, they would salivate more. So he discovered that basically an unconditioned response had occurred, which led to his whole scientific process. But it's actually crazy because Ivan Pavlov, in his time, it was more religious, jobs, I guess. And he actually strayed away from the religion and was seen as a completely bad person because he went into more of the science field. And the Soviet Union actually was so surprised that he discovers that they gave him unlimited scope in his research abilities, according to Nobel lectures in physiology or medicine 1901 to 1921. Now you might be wondering, why dogs? Well, he discovered the dogs because when he was doing the digestion, he realized that they would associate the lab assistant's footsteps with with being fed. So when he discovered that, he basically made his whole career around developing it further, according to McLeod and Pavlov's dogs. Now, while the discovery was an accident, further study was not, which led to classical conditioning, is where you associate two different stimuli, according to Roundy, classical conditioning versus operant conditioning, differences and examples. And basically, two unlike stimuluses, you pair them together and you get an voluntary or an involuntary response. And Watson and Skinner would expand this later on in their careers by taking his teachings and learning and developing. So Watson believed that all aspects of human psychology could be explained by this theory. And he tested this on a little baby named Little Albert, and he made him fear a white rat, to where later on he went back years later and realized that he was afraid of rats and he just didn't understand why. And that was according to McLeod and classical conditioning. Now, operant conditioning is voluntary responses, and you have a reinforcement and a punishment instead. And you can basically, if you punish a person, it tells them stop doing that, and they learn to control and to not do that voluntary behavior. According to Roundy, CC versus OC, differences and examples. And consequently, following discovery and expansion of classical conditioning, the world of psychology changed. How this Ivan Pavlov's effect basically led to many scientists building off of his branch, and it made operant conditioning. It started the Skinner box, like all kinds of things, and it branched the associative learning side of psychology. According to Ivan Pavlov in the Theory of Conditioning article. And he was actually not a psychologist at all. And a lot of people don't understand that Ivan Pavlov actually hated the study of psychology. But they decided to utilize his work anyways because they discovered it was like a really important thing they could branch off of. According to Cherry on a profile of Ivan Pavlov, and advancements made from this study is that they can leak phobias such as spiders and everything, and they can train you to not be so scared anymore. And according to Ivan Pavlov and the Theory of Classical Conditioning, an article. In closing, classical conditioning was discovered by Ivan Pavlov and has changed psychology. Now, whether you're interested in figuring out the human mind, or while you may not be interested at all, when you question small things, maybe spare it a thought instead. And even if you are perfectly content with how you are as a person, the world of science could expand from knowledge of accidental experience that occurred thanks to people such as Ivan Pavlov.